Nate Sheets is running for Texas Agricultural Commissioner, aiming to take over the state's Department of Agriculture. If elected, he would oversee programs affecting Texas farmers, ranchers, and consumers, including food safety, infrastructure, and economic development. Mr. Sheets joins me now to discuss his vision for the department, how he plans to tackle challenges like water scarcity and livestock health, and what changes he hopes to bring to Texas agriculture. Mr. Sheets, welcome to Hello Houston.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Mr. Sheets, let's start with what motivated you originally to seek this office?
I spent about 30 years in the food industry. I started with one beehive in my backyard and turned it into what's the largest honey company in America called Nature Nates. And so I've spent my career really focusing on growing revenue, growing brands, accessing distribution, creating a new market inside of honey called raw and unfiltered, a new sector that was always been around, but no one ever really focused on creating a product focused around that. And then also just testing for pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, corn syrup, rice syrup. And so I started with that one beehive and turned it to the number one brand in America, the largest honey company. And so I have that background. I've got a cow-calf operation, ranching, and kind of the agricultural side, but there's never been anyone who's got this food experience. And so when I think about agriculture today, it's about clothing and feeding people. And the challenge that we have in relationship to feeding people is so many people are getting sick from the food that we eat. And we've recently seen the FDA and the USDA and the HHS really take that food pyramid, turn it upside down, and make it about all the things that are coming off the farm. But as it relates to the farm, unfortunately, we are losing farmers and ranchers like never before. We lost 68 farms this week and last week and the week before because farmers and ranchers can't afford to be in business any longer. They're making 60% less revenue wise, and yet all their expenses have gone up 300%. And so I felt like I could really contribute to really try to help clean up the food that we all eat, and at the same time help farmers and ranchers not just survive, but thrive.
So looking at it from your perspective, you talked a little bit about the consumer aspect of it and people's health versus also looking at ranchers and their farms. From your perspective, what is the biggest challenge then facing Texas farmers, ranchers, and the consumers today?
I think we have two things competing. When you're losing agriculture because farmers and ranchers can't afford to be in business, we're trying to raise their revenue, raise their profitability. But at the same time, in America right now, we have a president and who's really trying to drive down consumer pricing and affordability, especially at the grocery store retail shelf. And so those two things really work at odds with each other. But with my experience in the food industry, I realized that so much of from a producer to a consumer is all about distribution and margin on top of margin on top of margin. And so how do we start to bring the producer and the consumer closer together and cut down that distribution channel to allow us to affordably lower prices, but at the same time allow farmers to make more money by being able to sell more directly and as closely to consumers as possible, which the benefit from a health standpoint is consumers ask questions. I have my cell phone number on the back of every bottle of honey I sold from 1997 until 2014. So for 17 years. And now that I look back on it, it was a 17-year consumer research project. But yet there were just a handful of questions over those 17 years that people ever asked, where did you make your honey? Do you test it for chemicals and pesticides? Do you add anything to it? Do you put corn syrup in it? And so, as I think about where consumers are today, especially with AI and ChatGPT, they're more educated than ever before. So as consumers purchase more closely from producers, they're going to start asking questions, and farmers and ranchers are going to realize the cleaner, safer, more nutritious food I can produce, the more people are willing to pay for it.
So then my question becomes, how do you balance that, making sure that you are strengthening Texas agriculture and looking out for ranchers while also keeping those grocery prices down and manageable for Texans?
Yes, and again, it's if we can we have the Go Texan program here
Yes.
in Texas, and
Hmm.
it's a program that's created to help producers be able to sell direct to consumers or through retail or through digital distribution. And so, unfortunately, though, we do not have leadership in the Texas Department of Agriculture that really understands how to drive that and use that as a tool. And if you go on the Go Texan website today, it looks more like a elementary school fundraising project. It's got scented candles and healing crystal earrings and bracelets and things that have nothing to do with agriculture. And so we will revamp that program and give producers the ability to go sell direct into grocery stores. When I was starting the honey business, in the late 1990s, I would get up 4 o'clock in the morning, go put honey on the shelf in grocery stores, and did that, all the way up till 2013 in different ways and capacities. And so, it's again giving producers access to grocery stores, but then also taking it and creating a robust .com platform that if you don't live near a HEB or United or a Walmart, then you can go sell products to anyone in the United States.
Hmm. Water scarcity is a looming issue across the state. How would you
Yes.
address the needs of both municipalities and agriculture?
Yeah, yesterday I was down in McAllen and I was meeting with a group of citrus farmers, and they are dying for water down there,
Hmm.
and so they need about, I think they said about 2.5 acre feet to be able to grow onions, and they've had about 1 acre foot this year, and so that directly impacts their ability to produce food. Yet at the same time, we have Secretary Rollins and Secretary Rubio going down and really working with Mexico to try to hold them accountable to provide the 350,000 acre feet of water from the treaty with Mexico and to farmers. But we also need to do that at a time when the farmers actually need the water. And
Hmm.
so yesterday, the farmers said the only way we're going to be able to hold Mexico as accountable is if we cut them off at the Colorado River, where they require so much of that water for Mexico. And so, again, I think President Trump really views the plight that agriculture has today, especially as it relates to water, and he is going to hold them accountable. And he's not afraid to wield a big stick to get done what we need to get done.
But looking at Texas, it's not just, unfortunately, rural cities or South Texas that need waters. This is something that is affecting everybody, including
Yeah.
Houstonians and Harris County. Can you talk to us about how you would balance prioritizing what areas within Texas need water and understanding how you would help with that policy moving forward?
Yeah, I think the general Texan who lives in Dallas or lives in Houston or Austin, maybe in Austin, but might not feel like water is the scarcity of water is not an issue. But it's once you go to where the areas where water is produced or needed most, like in East Texas, they're very concerned with groundwater access to where landowners have been able to come in and buy land and be able to go and sell this land off to cities and not knowing really where that water goes. Yet you go up into the middle of North Texas and people are concerned about the eminent domain of coming in, taking their land and using it for a reservoir that they've been planning for the past 30 years. You go out to West Texas, it's a totally different issue. You're talking about produced water. So in the Permian Basin, we have 26 million barrels of water that come out every day out of the Permian Basin while we're extracting the 6 million barrels of oil on a daily basis. And so that produced water, Senator Charles Perry, who's the Senate chairman for the Senate Ag Committee, has been working on an 8-year project. He's 6 years into it to try to get that water to where it's potable and able to be utilized in agriculture. And then we go down into South Texas and we're dealing, with the issues in Mexico. And, so anywhere along the Gulf Coast, I think people believe that desalinization to where we could utilize salt water that'd be purified to be able to use in Houston or Corpus Christi and shipped even over into the McAllen area and up to Laredo. We've got some of the best engineers in the world as it relates to moving liquid around. We've got the entire oil and gas industry. And so we're very accustomed to that, but we just have to figure out the financial viability in how to take a desal plant and go place it offshore because you have discharge of salt, higher salt content, and we have to be able to discharge that back into the ocean. But that's how Israel and Saudi Arabia and a lot of these other Middle Eastern countries that are surrounded just by oceans currently get their water. And so we just have to, there's not a one size fits all, but I also think it's about education,
Mhm.
educating people inside of cities to realize conservation is something that is necessary. None of us want to have a shower head restricted like they have had in California. Yet at the same time, it's going to take all of us to really address this because Senator Perry told me that I think we're, 20 years and $50 billion behind on really figuring out how to address the water issue as we continue to have droughts all over Texas.
Another pressing topic is animal health. For instance, surveillance and preparation for threats like the new World Screwworm. How would you approach biosecurity as a commissioner?
Yeah, I would partner and do what the USDA felt like is appropriate in APHIS. I was actually yesterday, I was down at the border with the governor and with Secretary Rollins at the new screwworm facility that's being opened that gives us the ability to process 100 million male flies a week and use them to be able to disperse. And so the New World Screwworm, for those of you that don't know, is a fly that lays an egg, and the egg, and they lay it on an animal or a person on an open wound or an orifice, and that when the egg hatches, the larva burrows, screws itself into the living host and eats flesh, living flesh from the inside out. So we've had that in Texas back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. The way we eradicated it was taking male flies and sterilizing them and then releasing about 500 million a week into high density areas where we were having an outbreak. And the female screwworm fly mates once. And so the goal is to outpopulate the fertile males with sterile males. And so when the female mates, that she's mating with a sterile fly, and that's how we beat it in the past. So we're working rapidly to open up another facility. They've got over 9,000 traps scattered all along the Rio Grande and down into Mexico to where they're trapping flies. They've got ivermectin and other medication ready if we do have an outbreak. But they've also taken the polygon, which is the area in which they can actually drop the flies, and moved it from just Mexico into the United States. So if we do have an outbreak, that we can quickly start to administer these sterile male flies in those areas. But beyond sterile, just a screwworm, we also have things like the pasture mealybug,
Mhm.
and we've taken our eye off the ball. And we've got an insect that's come in from Australia that's now has about 20 counties quarantined that this mealybug is eating coastal hay, Bermuda, and even St. Augustine grass. And so we really have to maintain our vigilance at Texas Department of Agriculture to ensure that we're doing everything that we can so as we're bringing agriculture in from around the world, even in nurseries,
Mhm.
that we're inspecting to ensure that we're not having those things in. And our current ag commissioner is, you know, there's about 40% of the nurseries that have not been inspected in the past 4 years. And so we're not doing a good job maintaining that biosecurity level.
Speaking of the current commissioner, Commissioner Miller has publicly suggested that your agricultural experience is limited to running a honey business and implied that you lack hands on farming experience. How do you respond to that characterization? Why do you believe you are actually qualified to lead the Texas Department of Agriculture?
Yeah, so under Commissioner Miller's watch, we have lost 18,000 farms in Texas. And the biggest challenge that farmers and ranchers have today are that they cannot generate enough revenue to be able to stay in business. That is what I have done with my entire career. I have, a large ranch, large cattle operation. We've got 2,000 stocker cattle out on our ranch currently. We do cutting horses. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. The people that he has currently in leadership at the Texas Department of Agriculture, none of them have been involved in agriculture. And that's why I have the endorsement of the Texas Farm Bureau, Texas Cattle Feeders Association, Texas Cattle Raisers Association, the Forestry Association, and most of the other agriculture associations, including Governor Abbott and Commissioner Don Buckingham from the Land Commission, have all endorsed me because everyone agrees that we cannot afford another 4 years of the current commissioner and his leadership team that all lack experience in agriculture and have continued to have us in this state of distress and emergency to fix it.
You mentioned Governor Greg Abbott's endorsement in this race. How do you plan to handle the expectation of making sure that you are essentially accepting the endorsement, but yet going to stay independent in looking out for the best interest for agriculture, ranchers, farmers, and consumers?
Yeah, I mean, listen, President Trump sees agriculture and the health of Americans as a national security issue. That's why he put Bobby Kennedy and Brooke Rollins in place. Brooke Rollins has expressed frustration over Sid Miller going off on a tangent, even trying to deal with the New World Screwworm with a trap that everyone knows does not work, and yet he's been insistent. And so they have publicly admonished him to just step back and let them do it. And so the President Trump has also been very encouraging and supportive of the work that Governor Abbott knows that we need to get done in agriculture. And so, yes, the Texas Department of Agriculture is an independent agency all unto itself, statutory, regulatory. But the thing that we've been missing in Texas is to have a leader that is able to bring people together and work on big issues. And so he is more concerned with trying to get people to follow him on social media and get clickbaits by trying to get you to look at things that have nothing to do with his job and making comments or focusing on these other things other than what the core issues of his jobs are. And the reason why he does that is to actually distract people from the fact that he really doesn't know what to do. And so it's not just going to be me going in and fixing agriculture for all of Texas. It's going to be all of us. And it is a huge undertaking. And it's going to take every single legislative member in the House and in the Senate, and also other agencies to be able to come alongside and ensure that we can do everything we can to help protect agriculture inside of Texas.
So, on the line of bringing people together, how are you handling the scrutiny that can come with the support from the governor, given that there are people that are looking at immigration policy that affects ranchers and affects the labor market within Texas?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it doesn't take long when you're out talking to agriculture to realize that labor is a huge issue. I've been a businessman. I've had, hundreds of employees. And so access to good, strong labor is really important. These citrus growers down there have, 40-50% of their employees are H-2A workers. And unfortunately, the workers that they have the greatest challenge with are U.S. citizen workers. And so foreign workers come in, and they call them the Marines, that they come in and, man, they can just work through a field. And so, ever since COVID, we've just had a hard time in every sector of business and of having good, reliable, committed employees that want to work hard and make a good wage. And so, we've got the literal number of employee issue that we need to deal with and accessing it. But more importantly, we have the quality issue, which I think is more systemic to societal changes that we really need to try to inspire, young people to work again.
How would you assure skeptical farmers that you understand their daily challenges?
I'm going to be there talking to them. I mean, I have so much support when I'm out at the farm, and they are so grateful. I mean, yesterday, as I was walking through fields with these farmers, they were like, you do not understand the bureaucratic regulations that are placed on us to make it almost impossible to be in business. Again, I'm a business guy, and I'm coming at this from a businessman's perspective. And one of the things we're going to do when we get into TDAs, we're going to deregulate. We're going to figure out what regulations are they associated with public health, or they help a farmer or rancher be in business. And if they don't, let's figure out how we get rid of them. And then we're going to lower fees. Sid Miller has raised fees by $26 million on farmers because the legislature could not entrust him by giving him an increased budget. And so they've actually taken responsibility and budget requirements away from him. And so that's why he went out and raised $26 million of fees to do things like paying for his TV show that features the commissioner more so than even agriculture. And so there's parts of the TDA that we need to go in and doge and clean up. And those are really associated with the things that Commissioner Miller and his team were doing to promote him. But the things that don't need to be doged, like farming and ranching industry in general, we're going to get in and figure out how we can take those funds and redirect them in a way that are impactful for everyday farmer and rancher. And so they're excited that there's about to be a change, and it's across every category of commodity sectors. I mean, I spoke to aquaculture, oyster people this morning, and they said, we cannot wait to have you in there because they know that I understand what it takes to be successful and to be able to help drive revenue.
If elected, what is your first initiative to ensure that both rural and urban communities feel equally heard?
Yeah, so I like to say it, we're going to grow food better and grow better food. And the thing that we need to do first and foremost is one, go in and clean up the TDA. They've had over 160 employees leave, and since March of last year, after Sid Miller's campaign manager pled guilty to a felony for commercial bribery, defrauding farmers. And then he was hired as the chief of staff of the Texas Department of Agriculture, where he sits today being paid $218,000. And so he has gone in and just destroyed the culture. It's a very toxic culture. And so employees are just dying for new leadership. And so we're going to go in and we're going to fix the culture. We're going to create a service of focused on farmers and ranchers of excellence. And then we're going to go in and deregulate. And the next, we're going to go in and work on revamping the Go Texan program. And then finally, we're going to go tackle the school lunch program because we're 44th in the nation in nutritional value in the feeding of 5.5 million kids in the Texas school system. And so we're going to make it a goal of being in the top 10 at the end of our first term and do everything we can to help increase the level of education. The governor wants us to be first, and we can't be 44th in nutritional value of school lunch and be first in education.
Nate Sheets is a candidate for the Texas Agriculture Commissioner. Thank you for joining me today, Mr. Sheets. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.